good to be served than protecting the vested interests for whom this information is considered a matter of national security, whatever that means, and therefore justification for making it top secret. Also, I am now 83 years old. I have decided to leave this body, which has outlasted its usefulness to me, using a painless method of self-administered euthanasia. I have very few months to live and nothing to fear or lose. So I have moved away from Montana, where my husband and I lived for most of our life, to spend our remaining days in a lovely rented upstairs bedroom in a house in the homeland of my husband's family in County Meath, Ireland. I will die not far from the Great Mound at Nothandoe, the Fairy Mound of Darkness. These are sacred cairns, or massive stone structures that were erected about 3700 BCE and engraved with indecipherable hieroglyphs about the same time as the pyramids or other inexplicable stone monuments were being built all over the earth. I am also not far from the hill of Tara, that was once the ancient seat of power in Ireland, where 142 kings are said to have reigned in prehistoric and historic times. In ancient Irish religion and mythology, this was the sacred place of dwelling for the gods and was the entrance to the other world. St. Patrick came to Tara to conquer the ancient religions of the pagans. He may have suppressed the religious practices in the area, but he certainly did not have any impact on the gods who brought these civilizations to Earth, as you will discover when you read the documents enclosed. Therefore, this is a fitting location for my departure from this unholy world and final release from the burdens of this life. The crystal clear perspective of hindsight has revealed a higher purpose to me, assisting the survival of the planet, all living beings and life forms in our galaxy. The status quo of our government establishment has been to protect the people from knowledge of such matters. In fact, the only protection afforded by ignorance and secrecy is to hide the private agenda of those in power to enslave others, and by doing so, to disarm every perceived enemy and ally through superstition and stupidity. Therefore, I have enclosed the original and only existing copies of my personal notes and reflections on a matter which I have kept hidden from everyone, even my own family. I have also enclosed my copies of typed transcripts created by the stenographer who transcribed all of my interviews with the alien saucer pilot after each interview was finished. I do not have any copies of the tape recordings that were made of my interview reports. No one until now knows that I was able to secretly retain copies of the official interview transcripts. Now I'm entrusting these documents to your discretion to impart to the world in any form or manner you see fit. My only request is that you do so in a way that will not threaten your life or well-being, if possible. If you were to incorporate these notes of my experiences into a work of fiction, such as a novel, the factual nature of the material could be easily dismissed or discredited by any agency for whom the national security is used as a personal shield against scrutiny and justice. In doing so, you could disavow any knowledge of their true origin and claim that it is a fictitious work of your imagination. Whoever said that truth is stranger than fiction was right as rain. For most people, all of this will be unbelievable. Unfortunately, beliefs are not a reliable criteria for reality. Also, I'm sure that if we were to show these notes to anyone that would prefer physical, economic, or spiritual slavery over freedom, the subject matter contained in them would seem quite objectionable. If you attempted to publish the documents as a matter of factual reporting in a newspaper or on the evening TV news, they would be rejected out of hand as the work of a kook. The very nature of these documents make them unbelievable and therefore discreditable. Conversely, the release of this information is potentially catastrophic for certain political, religious, and economic vested interests. These documents contain information which is quite relevant to your interest and investigations into alien encounters and paranormal experience. To use your analogy in the Oz Factors book, I can honestly say that the few factual reports that have been made by others about alien influences are only a gentle breeze in the eye of the apocalyptic hurricane swirling around Earth. There really are wizards and wicked witches and flying monkeys in this universe. This information, which has been suspected and or speculated upon by so many for so long, has been constantly denied by mainstream media, academia, and the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address. As you know, in July 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield, RAAF, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Bomb Group had recovered a crashed flying disc from a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico, sparking intense media interest. Later that same day, the commanding general of the 8th Air Force stated that Major Jesse Marcel, who was involved with the ordinary recovery of the debris, had recovered only the tattered remnants of a weather balloon. The true facts of the incident have been suppressed by the United States government since then. You may not know that I was enlisted in the U.S. Women's Army Air Force, WAC, Medical Corps, which was a part of the U.S. Army back then. I was assigned to the 509th Bomb Group as a flight nurse at the time of the incident. When the news that there had been a crash was received at the base, I was asked to accompany Mr. Cabot, the county intelligence officer, to the crash site as the driver of his vehicle and to render any needed emergency medical assistance to any survivors if necessary. Therefore, I briefly witnessed the wreckage of an alien spacecraft as well as the remains of the several alien personnel aboard the craft who were already dead. When we arrived, I learned that one of the personnel on board the craft had survived the crash and was conscious and apparently uninjured. The conscious alien was similar in appearance but not the same as the others. None of the other personnel present could communicate with the survivor, as the being did not communicate verbally or by any recognizable signs. However, while I examined the patient for injuries, I immediately detected and understood that the alien being was attempting to communicate with me by mental images or telepathic thought, which projected directly from the mind of the being. I immediately reported this phenomenon to Mr. Cabot, as no other person present could perceive these thoughts and the alien seemed able and willing to communicate with me. It was decided after a brief consultation with the senior officer that I would accompany the surviving alien back to the base. This was partly due to the fact that I was a nurse and could attend to the physical needs of the alien, as well as serve as a non-threatening communicator and companion. After all, I was the only woman at the site and the only one who was not armed. I was thereafter assigned permanently to serve as a companion of the alien at all times. My duty was to communicate with and interview the alien and to make a complete report of all that I had discovered to command authorities. Subsequently, I was supplied with specific lists of questions provided to me by military and non-military personnel, which I was to interpret for the alien and record the responses to the questions provided. I also accompanied the alien at times during medical testing and the many other examinations to which the alien was subjected by staff from numerous government agencies. I was given a promotion in rank to Senior Master Sergeant to improve my security rating and to increase my pay grade from $54 a month to $138 per month for this very unusual assignment. I performed these duties from July 7th through August 1947, at which time the alien died or departed the body, as you will read about in my notes. Although I was never left entirely alone with the alien, as there were always military personnel, intelligence agency people, and a variety of other officials present from time to time, I did have uninterrupted access to and communication with the alien being for nearly 6 weeks. Hereinafter is an overview and summary of my personal recollections of conversations with the alien craft pilot, whom I came to know by the identity of Errol. I feel that it is my duty at this time, in the best interest of the citizens of Earth, to reveal what I have learned from my interaction with Errol during those 6 weeks, on the anniversary of her death or departure 60 years ago. Although I served as a nurse in the Army Air Force, I am not a pilot or technician. Further, I do not have any direct contact with the spacecraft or other materials recovered from the crash site at that time or thereafter. To that degree, it must be taken into consideration that my understanding of the communications I had with Errol are based on my own subjective ability to interpret the meaning of the thoughts and mental images I was able to perceive. Our communication did not consist of spoken language in the conventional sense. Indeed, the body of the alien had no mouth through which to speak. Our communication was by telepathy. At first, I could not understand Errol very clearly. I could perceive images, emotions, and impressions, but it was difficult for me to express these verbally. Once Errol learned the English language, she was able to focus her thoughts more precisely using symbols and meanings of words I could understand. Learning the English language was done as a favor to me. It was more for my own benefit than hers. By the end of our interview sessions, and increasingly since then, I have become more comfortable with telepathic communication. I have become more adept at understanding Errol's thoughts as though they are my own. Somehow, her thoughts became my thoughts. Her emotions are my emotions. However, this is limited by her willingness and intention to share her own personal universe with me. She is able to be selective about what communication I am allowed to receive from her. Likewise, her experience, training, education, relationships, and purposes are uniquely her own. This is the symbol of the domain. The domain is a race or civilization of which Errol, the alien I interviewed, is an officer, pilot, and engineer serving in the Domain Expeditionary Force. The symbol represents the origin and unlimited boundary of the known universe, united and integrated into a vast civilization under the control of the domain. Errol is currently stationed at a base in the asteroid belt, which she refers as a space station in the solar system of Earth. First and foremost, Errol is herself. Secondarily, she voluntarily serves as an officer, pilot, and engineer in the Domain Expeditionary Force. In that capacity, she has duties and responsibilities, but she is at leave to come and go as she pleases also. Please accept this material and make it known to as many people as possible. I repeat that it is not my intention to endanger your life with the possession of this material, nor do I really expect you to believe any of it either. However, I do sense that you can appreciate the value that such knowledge may have to those who are willing and able to face the reality of it. Mankind needs to know the answers to questions which are contained in these documents. Who are we? Where did we come from? What is our purpose on Earth? Is mankind alone in the universe? If there is intelligent life elsewhere, why have they not contacted us? It is vital that people understand the devastating consequences to our spiritual and physical survival if we fail to take effective action to undo the long-standing and pervasive effects of alien intervention on Earth. Perhaps the information in these documents will serve as a stepping stone to a better future for mankind. I hope that you can be more clever, creative, and courageous in the distribution of this information than I have been. May the gods bless you and keep you. Mrs. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, Senior Master Sergeant, Women's Army Air Force Medical Corps, retired. 100 Troytown Heights, Nevenmeath County, Meath, Ireland. Chapter 1. My first interview with the alien. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy personal note. By the time the alien had been returned to the base, I had already spent several hours with her. As I mentioned, Mr. Cabot told me to stay with the alien since I was the only person among us who could understand her communication. I could not understand my ability to communicate with the being. I had never before that time experienced telepathic communication with anyone. The non-verbal communication I experienced was like the understanding you might have when a child or dog is trying to get you to understand something, but much, much more direct and powerful. Even though there were no words spoken or signs made, the intention of the thoughts were unmistakable to me. I realized later that although I received the thought, I did not necessarily interpret its meaning exactly. I think that the alien being was not willing to discuss technical matters due to the nature of her position as an officer and pilot with the duty to maintain the security and confidentiality required by her own unit or organization. Any soldier who is captured by the enemy in the line of duty has a responsibility to withhold vital information, even in the face of interrogation or torture, of course. But in spite of that, I have always felt that the alien being was not really trying to hide anything from me. I just never got that feeling. Her communication always seemed honest and sincere to me, but I suppose you can never know for sure. I definitely feel that I shared a unique bond with the alien. It was a kind of trust or empathy that you have with a patient or a child. I think it was because the alien could understand that I was really interested in her and had no harmful intention. Nor would I allow any harm to come to her if I could prevent it. This was true too. I referred to the alien as her. Actually, the being was not sexual in any way, either physiologically or psychologically. She did have a rather strong feminine presence and demeanor. However, in terms of psychology, the being was asexual and had no internal or external reproductive organs. Her body was more like the body of a doll or a robot. There were no internal organs, as the body was not constructed of biological cells. It did have a kind of circuit system or electrical nervous system that ran throughout the body, but I could not understand how it worked. In stature and appearance, the body was quite short and petite, about 40 inches tall. The head was disproportionately large relative to arms, legs, and torso, which were thin. There were 3 fingers on each of 2 hands and feet, which were somewhat prehensile. The head had no operational nose or mouth or ears. I understand that a space officer does not need these, as space has no atmosphere to conduct sound. Therefore, sound-related sensory organs are not built into the body, nor does the body need to consume food, hence the absence of a mouth. The eyes were quite large. I was never able to determine the exact degree of visual acuity of which the eyes were capable, but I observed that her sense of sight must have been extremely acute. I think the lens of the eyes, which were very dark and opaque, may have also been able to detect waves or particles beyond the visual spectrum of light. I suspect that this may have included the full range of the electromagnetic spectrum, or more, but I don't know this for sure. When the being looked at me, her gaze seemed to penetrate right through me, as though she had X-ray vision. I found this a little embarrassing at first, until I realized she had no sexual intentions. In fact, I don't even think she ever even had the thought that I was male or female. It became very obvious after a short time with the being that the body did not require oxygen, food, or water, or any other external source of nutrition or energy. As I learned later, this being supplied her own energy, which animated and operated the body. It seemed a little bit eerie at first, but I got used to the idea. It's really a very simple body. There's not much to it compared to our own bodies. Errol explained to me that it was not mechanical, like a robot, nor was it biological. It is animated directly by her as a spiritual being. Technically, from a medical standpoint, I would not say that Errol's body could not be called alive. Her dull body is not a biological life form with cells and so forth. It had a smooth skin or covering which was gray in color. The body was highly tolerant to changes in temperature, atmospheric conditions, and pressure. The limbs were quite frail, without musculature. In space there is no gravity, so very little muscle strength is needed. The body was used almost entirely on a spacecraft or in low or no gravity environments. Since Earth has a heavy gravity, the body was not able to walk around very well, as the legs were not really suited to that purpose. The feet and hands were quite flexible and agile, however. Overnight before my first interview with the alien, the area had been transformed into a buzzing hive of activity. There were a dozen men working on setting up lights and camera equipment. A motion picture camera and microphone and tape recorder was there, also set up in the interview room. I don't know why a microphone was needed, since there were no verbal communications possible with the alien. There was also a stenographer and several people busy typing on typewriters. I was informed that an expert foreign language interpreter and a code-breaking team had been flown to the base during the night to assist with my efforts to communicate with the alien. There were also several medical personnel, specialists in various fields, to examine the alien. And a professor of psychology was there to help formulate questions and interpret the answers. As I was just a nurse, I was not considered to be a qualified interpreter, even though I was the only one there who could understand anything the alien was thinking. There were many subsequent conversations between us. Each interview resulted in an exponential increase in the understanding between us, as I will discuss later on in my notes. This is the first transcript with the answers to a list of questions provided to me by the intelligence officer at the base, which I debriefed to the stenographer immediately following the interview. Official transcript of interview, top secret. Official transcript of the U.S. Army, Air Force Roswell Army Airfield, 509th Bomb Group. Subject, alien interview, July 9th, 1947. Question, are you injured? Answer, no. Question, what medical assistance do you require? Answer, none. Question, do you need food or water or other sustenance? Answer, no. Question, do you have any special environmental needs such as air temperature, atmospheric chemical content, air pressure, or waste elimination? Answer, no. I am not a biological being. Question, does your body or spacecraft carry any germs or contamination that might be harmful to humans or other Earth life forms? Answer, no germs in space. Question, does your government know you are here? Answer, not at this time. Question, are others of your kind going to come looking for you? Answer, yes. Question, what is the weapons capability of your people? Answer, very destructive. I did not understand the exact nature of the kind of arms or weapons that they might have, but I did not feel that there was any malevolent intention in her reply, just a statement of fact. Question, why did your spacecraft crash? Answer, it was struck by an electrical discharge from the atmosphere, which caused us to lose control. Question, why was your spacecraft in this area? Answer, investigation of burning clouds. Radiation, explosions. Question, how does your spacecraft fly? Answer, it is controlled through mind, responds to thought commands. Mind or thought command are the only English language words I can think of to describe the thought. Their bodies, and I think the spacecraft, are connected directly to them through some kind of electrical nervous system that they control with their own thoughts. Question, how do your people communicate with each other? Answer, through mind, thought. The words mind and thought combined together are the closest English language words I can think of to describe the idea at this time. However, it is very obvious to me that they communicate directly from the mind, just as she is communicating with me. Question, do you have a written language or symbols for communication? Answer, yes. Question, what planet are you from? Answer, the home, birthplace world of the domain. Since I am not an astronomer, I have no way of thinking in terms of stars, galaxies, constellations, and directions in space. The impression I received was of a planet in the center of a huge cluster of galaxies that is to her like home or birthplace. The word domain is the closest word I can think of to describe her concept, images, and thoughts about where she is from. It could as easily be called the territory or the realm. However, I'm sure that it was not just a planet or a solar system or a cluster of stars, but an enormous number of galaxies. Question, will your government send representatives to meet with our leaders? Answer, no. Question, what are your intentions concerning Earth? Answer, preserve, protect property of the domain. Question, what have you learned about Earth governments and military installations? Answer, poor, small, destroy planet. Question, why haven't your people made your existence known to the people of Earth? Answer, watch, observe, no contact. I got the impression that contact with people on Earth was not permitted, but I could not think of a word or idea that communicated the impression I got exactly. They are just observing us. Question, have your people visited Earth previously? Answer, periodic, repeating observations. Question, how long have you known about Earth? Answer, long before humans. I'm not sure if the word prehistoric would be more accurate, but it was definitely a very long period of time before human beings evolved. Question, what do you know about the history of civilization on Earth? Answer, small interest, attention, small time. The answer to this question seemed very vague to me. However, I perceived that her interest in Earth history is not very strong, or that she did not pay much attention to it. Or maybe, I don't know. I really didn't get an answer to the question. Question, can you describe your home world to us? Answer, place of civilization, culture, history, large planet, wealth, resources always, order, power, knowledge, wisdom, 2 stars, 3 moons. Question, what is the state of development of your civilization? Answer, ancient, trillions of years, always, above all others, plan, schedule, progress, wind, high goals, ideas. I use the number trillions because I am sure that the meaning was a number larger than many billions. The idea of the length of time she communicated is beyond me. It's really closer to the idea of infinity in terms of Earth years. Question, do you believe in God? Answer, we think. It is. Make it continue. Always. I am sure that the alien being does not understand the concept of God or worship as we do. I assume that the people in her civilization were all atheists. My impression was that they think very highly of themselves and are very prideful indeed. Question, what type of society do you have? Answer, order, power, future always, control, growth. These are the closest words I can use to describe the idea she had about her own society or civilization. Her emotion in communicating her response to this question became very intense, very bright, and emphatic. Her thought was filled with an emotion that gave me a feeling of jubilation or joy, but it made me very nervous also. Question: are there other intelligent life forms besides yourself in the universe? Answer: everywhere. We are greatest, highest of all. Due to her small stature, I'm sure that she did not mean tallest or biggest. Again, her prideful nature showed through in the feeling that I received from her. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, personal note. This was the conclusion of the first interview. When the answers to the first list of questions were typed and given to the people who were waiting for them, they were very excited that I was able to get the alien to say anything. However, after they finished reading my answers, they were disappointed that I could not understand more clearly. Now they had a lot of new questions because of the answers I received to the first list of questions. An officer told me to await further instructions. I waited several hours in the adjoining office. I was not allowed to continue my interview with the alien. However, I was always well treated and allowed to eat and sleep and use the restroom facilities whenever I wanted. Eventually, a new list of questions was written for me to ask the alien. I gathered that quite a few other agents, government and military officials had arrived at the base by this time. They told me that several other people would be in the room with me during the next interview, so they could prompt me to ask for more detail during the interview. However, when I attempted to conduct the interview with these people in the room, I received no thoughts, emotions, or any other perceptible communication from the alien. Nothing. The alien just sat in a chair without moving. We all left the interview room. The intelligence agent became very agitated about this. He accused me of lying or making up the answers to the first questions. I insisted that all my answers were honest and as accurate as I could make them. Later that day, it was decided that several other people would attempt to ask questions of the alien. However, in spite of several attempts by different experts, no one else was ever able to get any communication at all from the alien. Over the next several days, a psychic research scientist from back east was flown to the base to interview the alien. Her name was Gertrude something or other. I don't remember the last name. On another occasion, an Indian clairvoyant named Krishnamurti came to the base to try to communicate with the alien. Neither one was successful at getting the alien to communicate anything. I was personally not able to communicate telepathically with either of these people either, although I did not think that Mr. Krishnamurti was a very kind and intelligent gentleman. Finally, it was decided that I should be left with the alien by myself to see if I could get any answers. Chapter 2, my second interview. In the next interview, I was told to ask the alien only one question. Official transcript of interview. Top secret. Official transcript of the U.S. Army Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, 509th Bomb Group. Subject, alien interview, July 10th, 1947. Question. Why have you stopped communicating? Answer. No stop. Others. Hidden, covered, secret fear. The alien cannot communicate with them because they were afraid of her or did not trust her. And it is clear to me that the alien is not aware that some people have secret intentions toward her and are hiding their real thoughts. It is equally obvious to me that the alien does not have even a tiny bit of fear of us, or anything else for that matter. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, personal note. I pondered the words I chose to convey the meaning of the alien's thoughts very carefully before reporting to the stenographer and the people who were waiting anxiously in the other room. Personally, I never suffered any fear or misapprehension about the alien whatsoever. I was very, very curious and excited to learn anything and everything I could about her and from her. However, like the aliens, I did not have much trust or confidence in the agents or authorities who were controlling my interviews. I had no idea what their intentions toward her might be. However, I am sure that the military officers were very, very nervous about having an alien spacecraft and pilot on their hands. At that moment, my greatest worry was how to more clearly understand the thoughts and ideas of the alien. I think that I was doing pretty well as a telepathic receiver, but not as good as a telepathic sender. I wanted desperately to figure out a better way to communicate with the alien, in a way that would enable the growing legion of government officials to understand her more directly, without having to rely on my interpretation of her thoughts. I did not feel very well qualified to act as an interpreter, yet I was the only person with whom the alien would communicate, so it was up to me to get the job done. I was also becoming acutely aware that this was probably the biggest news event in the history of the Earth, and that I should be proud to have had any part in it. Of course, by that time the entire incident had been officially denied in the press, and a cover-up of immense proportions by the military and the powers that be had already begun. However, I was beginning to feel the pressure of the responsibility for being the first person on Earth, as far as I knew, to communicate with an extraterrestrial life form. I think I know how Columbus must have felt when he discovered a new world the size of a continent on one small planet, but I was able to discover an entirely new unexplored universe. While I waited for my next instructions from my superiors, I went to my quarters under escort of several heavily armed MPs. Several other men dressed in black suits and ties accompanied me also. They were still there when I got up in the morning. After breakfast, which was brought to me in my own quarters, they escorted me back to the office at the base that was used for the interview. Roswell, Alien Interview, Chapter 3, My Third Interview, Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, Personal Note. The third interview and all subsequent interviews that I had with the alien were observed and recorded, as I mentioned above, by dozens of other people. Although they were not physically present, a special room had been constructed with a window of one-way glass through which the interview could be observed from an adjoining room without intruding on the alien. The alien had been moved into a newly constructed room and was seated in an ordinary overstuffed living room chair covered with a flowery fabric. I'm sure that someone had been sent into town to buy a chair from the nearest available furniture store. The alien's body was about the same size as a very thin 5-year-old child, so she was dwarfed by the chair. Since her body was not biological, it didn't need any food, air, or heat, and apparently she didn't sleep either. There were no eyelids or eyebrows above her eyes, so the eyes didn't close. I don't think anyone could tell whether she was sleeping or awake as long as she was sitting upright in the chair. Unless she moved her body or gestured with her hand, it would be hard to tell whether she was even alive or not unless you could perceive her thoughts. Eventually, I learned that the alien was not identified by her body, but by her personality, so to speak. She was known by her fellow aliens as Errol. This is the closest word I can use to describe the name using the English alphabet. I sensed that she preferred the feminine gender. I think we shared a natural female empathy and nurturing attitude toward life and each other. I am sure she did not feel comfortable with the combative, aggressive, domineering attitude of the male officers and agents, each of whom was more concerned with their own personal self-importance and power than with discovering the secrets of the universe. When I entered the room, she was very pleased to see me. I felt a very genuine sense of recognition, relief, and a warm feeling from her. It was like the eager excitement and unconditional platonic affection one feels from a dog or a child, yet with a calm and reserved control. I must say that I was surprised that I felt the same sort of affection for the alien being, especially since we had spent so little time with each other. I was pleased that I was able to continue my interviews with her in spite of all the attention it was getting from the stream of government and military people arriving at the base. It was very obvious that the people who wrote the next series of questions for me wanted to learn how to communicate with the alien themselves without having to go through me. Here are the answers to the new list of questions. Official transcript of interview, top secret. Official transcript of the U.S. Army, Air Force, Roswell, Army Airfield, 509th Bomb Group. Subject, alien interview, July 11, 1947. Question, can you read or write any Earth languages? Answer, no. Question, do you understand numbers or mathematics? Answer, yes, I'm an officer, pilot, engineer. Question: Can you write or draw symbols or pictures that we may be able to translate into our own language? Answer: uncertain. Question: Are there any other signs or means of communication you can use to help us understand your thoughts more clearly? Answer: no. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, personal note. I was very sure that this was not true, but I understand clearly that Errol was not willing to communicate in writing or drawing or sign language. My feeling was that she was following orders like any soldier who had been captured, not to reveal any information that might be useful to an enemy, even under torture. She was only able and willing to reveal non-confidential or personal information or name, rank, and serial number. Official transcript of interview, top secret. Official transcript of the U.S. Army Air Force Roswell Army Airfield, 509th Bomb Group. Subject: alien interview, July 11th, 1947, second session. Question: Can you show us on a map of the stars which is the star of your home planet? Answer: no. This is not because she does not know the directions from Earth to her home planet. She was unwilling to reveal the location. It was also due to the fact that the star system of her home planet does not exist on any star map on Earth. It's too far away. Question: How long will it take your people to locate you here? Answer: unknown. Question: How long would it take your people to travel here to rescue you? Answer: minutes or hours. Question: How can we make them understand that we do not intend to harm you? Answer: intentions are clear. See in your mind. Images, feelings. Question: If you are not a biological entity, why do you refer to yourself as feminine? Answer: I am a creator, mother, source. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, personal note. These questions only took me a few minutes to complete. I realized then that we may be in for some serious trouble if the alien was not willing to cooperate or reveal any information that the military or intelligence agencies or scientists consider to be useful to them. I was also sure that the alien was very certain of the actual intentions of the people who wrote these questions, as she could read their minds just as easily as she could read my thoughts and communicate with me telepathically. Because of these intentions, she was unwilling and unable to cooperate with any of them in any way under any circumstances. And I am equally sure that since she is not a biological life form, that there was no kind of torture or coercion that would change her mind. Roswell, Alien Interview, Chapter 4, The Language Barrier. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, personal note. After I explained what I thought were the reasons for the no answer to the intelligence agents, there was a great deal of upset and turmoil. A very heated discussion took place between some of the intelligence officers, military officials, psychologists, and the language interpreters. This lasted for several hours. It was finally decided that I should be allowed to continue to interview the alien, provided I could get a satisfactory answer from her to the following question. Official transcript of interview, top secret. Official transcript of the U.S. Army Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, 509th Bomb Group. Subject: alien interview, July 11th, 1947, third session. Question: What assurance or proof do you require from us that will make you feel safe enough to answer our questions? Answer: only she speaks, only she hears. Only she questions, no others. Must learn, know, understand. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, personal note. When I returned to the interview room to report the alien response to this question, I received a grim and skeptical reception from the assembled intelligence agents and military personnel. They could not understand what the alien meant by this. I admitted that I really couldn't understand what she meant either, but I was doing the best that I could to articulate her telepathic intentions. I told the officials that perhaps the communication problem had to do with my inability to understand the telepathic language of the alien clearly enough to be satisfactory. I was so discouraged at that point I almost felt like giving up. And now there was even more arguments than before. I was sure I was going to be removed from my position in spite of the fact that the alien refused to communicate with anyone else, or that no one else had been found who could communicate with her. Fortunately, a very clever fellow named John Newble, who was a Japanese language specialist from the Navy, had an explanation and a solution to the problem. He explained that first, the problem had very little to do with the inability of the alien to communicate. It had more to do with her unwillingness to communicate with anyone other than myself. Second, in order for any clear, comprehensive communication to happen, both parties needed to understand and communicate through a common language. Words and symbols in language convey very precise concepts and meanings. He said that the Japanese people have a lot of homonyms in their language which cause a lot of confusion in day-to-day communication. They solved this problem by using standard Chinese characters to write down the exact meaning of the word they are using. This clears up the matter for them. Without a defined nomenclature, communication was not possible beyond the rudimentary understanding between men and dogs or between two small children. The lack of a common vocabulary of clearly defined words that all parties can use fluently is the limiting factor in communication between all people, groups, or nations. Therefore, he suggested that there were only two choices. I had to learn to speak the language of the alien, or the alien had to learn to speak English. Factually, only one choice was possible, that I persuade Errol to learn English, and that I teach it to her with the guidance of the language specialist. No one had any objection to trying this approach, as there were no other suggestions. The language specialists suggested that I take several children's books and a basic reading primer and grammar text with me into the interview room. The plan was that I would sit next to the alien and read aloud to her from the books, while pointing to the text I was reading with my finger so that she could follow along. The theory was that the alien could eventually be taught to read just as a child is taught to read by word and sound association with the written word, as well as instruction in fundamental grammar. They also assumed, I think, that if the alien was intelligent enough to communicate with me telepathically and fly a spacecraft across the galaxy, that she could probably learn to speak a language as quickly as a 5-year-old or faster. I returned to the interview room and proposed this idea to Errol. She did not object to learning the language, although she did not make any commitment to answer questions either. No one else had a better idea, so we went ahead. Roswell, Alien Interview, Chapter 5, Reading Lessons, Matilda O'Donnell McElroy Personal Note. I began the reading lessons with the first pages of a book that had been used to teach pioneer children in the 1800s on the frontiers of America. It is called McGuffey's Eclectic Reader, Primer through 6th. Since I am a nurse and not a teacher, the language expert who gave me the books also gave me an extensive briefing, a course that took an entire day, on how to use the books to teach the alien. He said the reason he chose these particular books was because the original 1836 version of these books were used for 3/4 of a century to teach about 4/5 of all American school children how to read. No other books ever had so much influence over American children for so long. McGuffey's educational course begins in the primer by presenting the letters of the alphabet to be memorized in sequence. Children were then taught step by step to use the building blocks of the language to form and pronounce words using the phonics method, which involves teaching children to connect sounds with letters. Each lesson begins with a study of the words used in the reading exercise and with markings to show the correct pronunciation for each word. I discovered that the stories in the first and second readers picture children in their relationship with family members, teachers, friends, and animals. The third, fourth, fifth, and sixth readers expanded on those ideas. One of the stories I remember was The Widow and the Merchant. It's kind of a morality tale about a merchant who befriends a widow in need. Later, when the widow proves herself to be honest, the merchant gives her a nice gift. The books do not necessarily teach you to believe that charity is expected only of wealthy, though. We all know that generosity is a virtue that should be practiced by everyone. All of the stories were very wholesome, and they gave very good explanations to illustrate virtues like honesty, charity, thrift, hard work, courage, patriotism, reverence for God, and respect for parents. Personally, I would recommend this book to anyone. I also discovered that the vocabulary used in the book was very advanced compared to the relatively limited number of words people use commonly in our modern age. I think that we have lost a lot of our own language since our founding fathers wrote the Declaration of Independence over 200 years ago. As instructed, I sat next to Errol in the interview room, reading aloud to her from each successive book in the series of the McGuffey Readers. Each of the books had excellent, simple illustrations of the stories and subjects being taught, although they are very outdated by today's standards. Nonetheless, Errol seemed to understand and absorb every word, sound, syllable, and meaning as we progressed. We continued this process for 14 hours a day for 3 consecutive days without interruption, except for a few meals and rest breaks on my part. Errol did not take breaks for anything. She did not sleep. Instead, she remained sitting in the overstuffed chair in the interview room, reviewing the lessons we already covered. When I returned each morning to begin where we'd left off, she had already memorized the previous lessons and was well into the next pages. This pattern continued to accelerate until it became pointless for me to continue reading to her. Although Errol did not have a mouth to speak with, she was now able to think at me in English. At the end of these lessons, Errol was able to read and study by herself. I showed her how to use a dictionary to look up new words she encountered. Errol consulted the dictionary continually after that. From then on, my job was acting as a courier for her, requesting that reference books be brought to her in a steady stream. Next, Mr. Newble brought in a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Errol especially enjoyed this because it had a lot of pictures. After that, she requested many more picture books and reference books with photographs and drawings, because it was much easier to understand the meaning if she could see a picture of the thing she was studying. Over the next 6 days, books were brought in from libraries all over the country, I presume, because it wasn't more than a few more days before she had read through several hundred of them. She studied every subject I could imagine, and many other very technical things I never wanted to know anything about, like astronomy, metallurgy, engineering, mathematics, various technical manuals, and so forth. Later she began to read fiction books, novels, poetry, and the classics of literature. Errol also asked to read a great many books on the subjects in the humanities, especially history. I think she must have read at least 50 books about human history and archaeology. Of course, I made sure that she received a copy of the Holy Bible also, which she read from cover to cover without comment or questions. Although I continued to stay with Errol for 12 to 14 hours each day, most of that time during the following week had been spent without much communication between us, except for an occasional question she asked me. The questions were usually meant to give her a sense of context or to clarify something in the books she was reading. Oddly, Errol told me that her favorite books were Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Don Quixote's de la Mancha, and 1001 Nights. She said the authors of these stories showed that it is more important to have a great spirit and imagination than great skill or power. I could not answer a lot of her questions, so I consulted with people in the outer rooms for answers. Most of these had to do with technical and scientific things. A few of her questions were about the humanities. The depth of complex understanding and subtlety of her questions showed that she had a very penetrating intellect. Personally, I think she had already known a lot more about the culture and history of Earth than she was willing to admit when we started. I would soon discover how much more. Roswell, Alien Interview, Chapter 6, My Education Begins. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy personal note. By the 15th day after rescuing Errol from the crash site, I was able to communicate fluidly and effortlessly with her in English. She had absorbed so much more written material by this time that her academic education far exceeded my own. Although I graduated from high school in Los Angeles in 1940 and attended college for 4 years of pre-medical and nursing training, the variety of my own reading had been fairly limited. I had not studied most of the subjects to which Errol had now been exposed, especially considering her acute understanding, very intense study habits, and a nearly photographic memory. She was able to recall long passages from books she read. She was especially fond of sections of her favorite stories from classic literature like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Tales from Gulliver's Travels, and Peter Pan, and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. By this time Errol had become the teacher and I was the student. I was about to learn what men of Earth don't know and have no way of knowing. The throng of scientists and agents who observed us through the one-way glass of our interview room, whom Errol and I now referred to as the gallery, were growing increasingly impatient to ask her questions. But Errol continued to refuse to allow any questions to be asked of her by anyone other than myself, even vicariously through me as an interpreter or in writing. On the afternoon of the 16th day, Errol and I sat next to each other as she read. She closed the last page of a book she was reading and placed it aside. I was about to hand her the next book from a large pile waiting to be read when she turned and said, or thought to me, "I'm ready to speak now." At first I was a little confused by the remark. I gestured for her to continue, and she began to teach me my first lesson. Official transcript of interview, top secret. Official transcript of the U.S. Army Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, 59th Bomb Group. Subject, alien interview, July 24th, 1947. First session. "What would you like to say, Errol?" I asked. "I have been part of a domain expeditionary force in this sector of space for several thousand years. However, I have not personally had intimate contact with beings on Earth since 5965 BCE. It is not my primary function to interact with inhabitants of planets within the domain. I am an officer, pilot, and engineer with many duties to perform. Nonetheless, although I'm fluent in 347 other languages within the domain, I have not been exposed to your English language. The last Earth language with which I was conversant was the Sanskrit language of the Vedic hymns. At that time I was a member of a mission sent to investigate the loss of a domain base located in the Himalaya Mountains. An entire battalion of officers, pilots, communications, and administrative personnel disappeared and the base destroyed. Several million years ago, I was trained and served as an investigation, data evaluation, and program development officer for the domain. Because I was experienced in that technology, I was sent to Earth as part of a search team. One of my duties involved interrogation of the human population that inhabited the adjoining area at that time. Many of the people in that region reported sighting Vimanas, or spacecraft, in the area. Following the logical extension of evidence, testimony, observation, as well as the absence of certain evidence, I led my team to the discovery that there were still old Empire ships and well-hidden old Empire installations in this solar system of which we had been completely unaware. You and I were unable to communicate in your language because I personally have not been exposed to your language. However, now that I have scanned the books and the material you provided me, this data has been relayed to our space station in this region and processed by our communications officer through our computers. It has been translated into my own language and relayed back to me in a context that I can think with. I have also received additional information from the files stored in our computers about the English language and domain records concerning Earth civilization. Now I'm prepared to give you certain information that I feel will be of great value to you. I will tell you the truth. Although truth is relative to all other truth, I wish to share with you, as honestly and accurately as possible, truth as I see it, within the boundaries of my integrity to myself, to my race, and without violating my obligations to the organization I serve and have sworn to uphold and protect. Okay, I thought. Will you answer questions from the gallery now? No, I will not answer questions. I will provide information to you that I think will be beneficial to the well-being of the immortal, spiritual beings who comprise humanity, and that will foster the survival of all the myriad life forms and the environment of Earth, as it is a part of my mission to ensure the preservation of Earth. Personally, it is my conviction that all sentient beings are immortal spiritual beings. This includes human beings. For the sake of accuracy and simplicity, I will use a made-up
Which
word.
is, I'll just throw it out there.
be,
There was no such
because
thing
the
as
primary nature of an